Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington, and I am really excited today. I am joined by Karmel Ackerman, the director of the barn at Holly Farm, and it's awesome that I know it's busy. We're getting into the open house here up at your venue, and I'm really thankful that you made the time. I'm sure it's really busy and made the time to come in and we can talk about not only you and the barn, but then obviously the open house as well. We'll kind of talk about all that stuff. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure, Reed. Thanks. First of all, it's really great to meet you. I'm really thrilled to make a new relationship in the wedding industry. It has been a very welcoming industry, and I have been really delighted to meet some of the really seasoned professionals around the Puget Sound. Anyway, my name is Karmel Ackerman, and I'm the director of the barn at Holly Farm. And Holly Farm, my goal at Holly Farm was to create an agritourism center. And along with it comes a big, beautiful barn that I refurbished and created as an event center. And it's a beautiful place. We say it's right on the edge of urban. We're 25 miles from Seattle, 20 from Bellevue, 15 Kirkland. And when you pull through the gates at Holly Farm, you really are transported into a rural environment. And it is a wonderful place to create face-to-face communication and take you out of the world of electronics and take you to a rural, comfortable life there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the big trend now is, kind of a little more rustic weddings, at least in Seattle. I mean, I'm sure you can go like to LA or something that's different, but, it really kind of is on brand, I think, for what's really appealing to couples nowadays and kind of wanting to get that beauty outside, like you said, kind of away from electronics. Like, how has it been kind of working in there and kind of, building it up over the last year or so?
Yeah, it's been a really amazing process. And we can talk about this later, but it wasn't originally intended to be a wedding venue at all. But now that it is, we are expanding and doing all of the things that the wedding industry and the brides are looking for in a beautiful space. It's a 97-year-old historic barn. It is very raw. If you listen very closely, you can probably still hear the hooves of the Arabians that were raised and bred there. It was the barn for the Snohomish County Sheriff's Posse. And they were born and bred there and stabled there and practiced in the fields around the barn. And we dove in, and when we found out that there was actually a wedding industry and brides came knocking on the door, we started refurbishing it towards that industry. And today, as we speak, we have an outdoor, beautiful 24 by 24 foot patio being put in on a very beautiful lawn. So people will be able to have a wedding outdoors and, of course, have the backup of the barn inside. The barn's about 3,000 square feet, holds 200 people seated at rounds. Many people choose to have very beautiful farm-style tables brought in and have a farm-style farm-based, rural, rustic, vintage, elegant, classic wedding there too.
Yeah, it's you had sent over. I can't remember if it was the info you had sent over. I was looking at the site, but yeah, kind of this the restoration process where
Yes.
you had. So talk about like taking over. I mean, walk me through that. And
Go back.
How did you get involved in that?
Sure. So I was led to Holly Farm by a situation in our life where we needed to find some counseling, and Holly Farm has a beautiful equine therapy and equine counseling center, and came onto the barn and met the woman who was running the center, and I felt very strongly that I was led to raise money to help her bring other local kids to the farm to have therapy, because I had experienced myself how powerful that therapy was. And throughout the course of those years, I was then asked what I was doing. I had been retired from the stage production industry and was asked if I could host a couple fundraising dinners. And I said, sure, I could definitely do that. And was told, I could use the barn. And at the time, it didn't even occur to me that a barn would be there and not filled with animals. So we opened the doors that day and found that the barn was filled to the rafters with stuff. People tend to think a farm and a farmer can fix anything like a field engineer. So they drop stuff that they feel is valuable. And that could be an old computer. It could be desks. It could be broken chairs. It was washers and dryers. There were pieces of cars in there. There was just about everything. And of course, the animal, the things from the horses, helmets, boots, all of the gear as well. And so it started as a philanthropic project, and I was just going to clean it up a bit, and we were going to go upstairs to the loft and have a dinner party. And when it took almost 6 months to clean everything out, about 200 trips to the dump for old stuff in a minivan. And when we peeled it all away, I realized that there was way more to it than I originally thought. And so we started refurbishing to bring corporates there, because that was my background, 22 years of corporate stage production. And you just think in that way. And since the farm had the therapy and does beautiful communication retreats and offsites for corporations, my intention was to expand that. And then I could seed that fund for local children that I wanted to support in therapy. And it just so happened that a bride came and drove in the parking lot one day and said, "Can I use this barn for my wedding?" And I said, "Why not?" And I really did not understand the community of the wedding industry at all. And she said, "Gosh, this is perfect for my wedding." And then someone else called. And so we kind of had to change the whole mindset of what we were doing there to accommodate weddings. And because weddings and stage productions in corporates and worldwide launches are 180 degrees in opposite directions, I got on the telephone to a hairstylist and a makeup artist, and I called a florist who was also a decorator and asked them to come over, and they were at minimum enthusiastic and outrageously excited about the potential of this place. And so I kind of turned the whole project on an end, and we remodeled towards that. And we put beautiful cafe lights up, strung them through the loft, and have them on the outdoor patio. And all this time later, a big lawn going in to accommodate that. So what was meant to be a philanthropic couple fundraiser dinners is now opened up me to a whole different industry. And so instead of retiring and doing philanthropic, I've rewired and now opened the door to the wedding industry. And I have to tell you, Reed, the people in the wedding industry are so incredibly supportive and so incredibly welcoming. They're thrilled. I know I'm in a unique situation because I am a venue, and everybody in the wedding industry needs additional venues to be able to get their business marketed and find new clients. So it has been fun for me to have the privilege to provide a venue for other businesses to do their marketing. So we do open houses, and we provide space for people in the industry to market their products and services while we are naturally getting exposure for the barn. And all of that is meant to seed a fund that I have that is going to be bringing in local foster kids into equine therapy.
No, that's awesome. I mean, a lot of thoughts. As someone that also famously never thought he was going to get into weddings, and actually had one of the first clients we ever had was Seattle Magazine to do some like business videos for them, and they said, "Oh, we can give you some advertising as well. Do you want it in Seattle Magazine or Seattle Bride Magazine?" And I looked at Paul, who was with me at the time, and I said, "Oh, we're never going to do weddings." So, and also the equine therapy, we had talked off mic. I do the videos for a little bit, which is another writing
incredible therapy program there.
So I mean, I just think that that's incredible. I was saying, I've spent a lot of time with them, and it really is amazing. The kind of the different types of therapies and things that you can incorporate. So obviously, that's close to my heart as well.
Yeah, what I was going to say to you is I had no idea the horses could talk. And through this process, I realized that they talk very, very clearly, much more clearly to children than they do to an adult. And children learn to read the horses, and they are taught at our equine therapy and leadership training that horses survive in their herd by changing roles and acknowledging other horses in the herd. And the kids that come out of this therapy recognize that they have a herd of friends at school. Adults find that they have a herd of staff that they have to relate to. And it is amazing how there is an aha moment in the process of learning about equine and how they relate, that it really does apply to the world of people around you. And that is a beautiful realization for people as they go through this process.
No, absolutely. That every year, we always sit down with the therapist that's working with the particular child, that we're spotlighting for the year. And I mean, they do say, and they go, no, we watch the horses, and we can tell that, that they know, and, that they want to be safe with the man, with the kids.
They're relating.
Or what needs to be done at that point. So no, that's fascinating. The other thing I was going to mention is, and like you said, different world from kind of the corporate to the weddings, but there is a lot of, similarities. I've had, people that used to do, corporate planning or other things on. It is amazing, like some of the overlap and, obviously the marketing and having, like your list of directives and what needs to be done. So you think that you're obviously well equipped to kind of transition from one to the other.
Interesting that you mentioned that, because in someone that rides horses, they recognize that a horse is a relator to a human being. And if you transfer that idea into the wedding industry, the professionals in the wedding industry have to be able to read and relate to the different couples that they are serving. And just like every human being, every couple has a different personality. Every bride and groom individually have different personalities. And so that relates beautifully to the learning that I have done through the farm, and then moving towards relating to the couples and everyone else in the industry.
Absolutely. And part of the podcast process here is, filling out the questionnaires and other things. And you have quite a kind of an interesting backstory, kind of akin to my heart with news and things like that. So why don't you kind of walk me through how we, got and
give a little brief.
Yeah, I'm sure it's
an interesting transition through life. Every life has different seasons that you go through. I started early career in ABC television news, and like everyone starting their career in television, you do whatever it takes. So I worked at a station in Jacksonville, Florida, when the new USFL started, and was out with meetings with big gunners for the football league. And I edited video and shot video and worked in early morning news and ran an engineering truck, and moved back to Iowa to finish a college degree and worked for ABC there. And I shot a summer of Minnesota Cubs baseball, laid on a dugout with a camera all summer long, and moved into entertainment television and worked for organizations kind of like Seattle's Good Company, I think it was called, in Seattle. I worked in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and then in Seattle. And in Seattle, as a producer for that show for a while, I was solicited by marketing and PR firms, and they were always looking to get their corporate executive clients on air for interviews. And finally, one day, after an ad agency had sent me 6 packets, I called them and said, listen, your ideas don't fly for entertainment television, so I'd like to talk to you about this, because perhaps your client is really a good interview. It just needs to be approached in a different way. And long story short, they asked if I could be hired out, and I started a company to consult. And the first customer or client, I built out of cardboard boxes a miniature television studio in their corporate offices, and selected and taught this gentleman how to present on news. And it went viral. To use a term for today, it's been a long time ago, but it went viral across the country, and we got 17 placements in entertainment early morning talk shows. And that really made a huge difference in that corporate. It happened to be a coffee company out of Seattle, and they expanded to the East Coast. And through that, I was then called by other high-tech corporations that were all startup in Seattle. And I was really blessed with a monstrous growth of a company over about the course of 22-ish years. I had a lot of employees and a lot of contractors, and the majority of our business was in the high-tech and banking and yacht businesses. And we did product launches around the country and around the world. So we threaded corporate messages through stage presentations and seminars and conferences and trade shows. And that I was blessed to have that company grow very, very quickly in the wave of the .com. And so I was able to retire out of that and play a little bit, and then came into a situation in life where I ran across this experience at Holly Farm. And instead of retiring, it was rewiring. And so here I am back in the industry, and I'm really, really pleased to be in this industry, in the event industry, and specifically the wedding industry. As I mentioned before, it's incredibly supportive.
Yeah. What's it been like kind of making that transition now and kind of getting into this community?
Right. Very different, very, very different. In the corporate event world, you are bidding and doing a dance to get a new client. And usually if you have a client and are helping them achieve their goals, you have a pretty solid relationship if nothing goes wrong in that process of that launch. And or if you're helping a business launch a new product, back in that time, there was a lot of venture capital money. And so there was a lot of really big things going on that needed really gutsy, skilled people to do them. And people that come from the television industry have to be multi-skilled. You have to be able to deal with a movie star. You have to be able to deal with somebody that has a brainchild to bring a new product on the market. And then you have to be able to deal with all of the vendors, and sometimes worldwide vendors, to make things happen. And they all have to come together at 1 second in a day. And so transitioning from that to the wedding industry was kind of like taking a great big breath of fresh air, because in both cases, people are spending a lot of money. But in a wedding, it's a massive, joyous, emotional experience for brides and grooms and their families. And it comes together as a very heightened emotional experience that is different than a corporate product launch. They both have anxieties and they both have pressure, but there is a joyous outpouring at a wedding and a relief afterwards for the people that were putting it together, usually the brides and grooms. In a corporate situation, there is huge high pressure, and then they come down for a day or two and the pressure comes right back on, because then they have the obligation to get that product onto the market. So it's a really fascinating difference, and I kind of look at that and that world, and I'm really liking the flavor and the essence of the wedding industry and the event industry on this side of it.
Yeah, I always kind of surprised how well, kind of my background in news too kind of transitioned into, like you said, kind of having to be like multifaceted and kind of being able to balance a lot of things. And also, the hardest thing for me, like you said, with, corporate or news or business is like that constant grind. And like, we would show up every day and you're already late, from the second you come in, you needed to be somewhere, not that you're late, but, like they need you somewhere in an hour.
The green light goes on and you're live.
Yeah. And so, that's been the hardest thing for me to kind of unwire.
Yes.
Even now with weddings, it's like, obviously like, we have the schedule and things are going, but like we can, kind of make adjustments on the fly where like it, when you're in TV, it's like, 5 o'clock's hitting.
Bang,
and,
it's on.
There's no, I remember, this is just a dumb story, but when I was in college, we had, we did we would do a news show every day, and, like 10 people would watch you, it was on like,
we did that too.
Yeah. And I remember my professor was trying to like explain like, well, like at 5 o'clock, like
you're on.
But I was like, but what if we're not?
Yeah,
this is
there is no not.
But I mean, this
in the news industry.
Yeah, but it's not like brain surgery. Like if we're not on, we're not on.
Well, in college, when you're not on, that's not a big deal. But when you're at one of the big news stations, when you're not on, those advertisers aren't so very happy. So. Funny. But obviously, so you kind of have you enjoyed kind of the more of the community and the networking now versus they always say like community over competition, but like in the wedding community and kind of making those inroads and things like that. Yes, I really have enjoyed that. I frankly, I was really shocked by it. I expected to go into a room with people that were in the industry and feel the edge of competition. Instead of that, I got collaboration. And that was so surprising to me. People came towards me instead of me going out towards them. And obviously, this is a slightly different position where when I ran my corporation, Inventive Marketing Associates, I was soliciting business and proposing business from corporate clients. And what I had done before and what my ideas were was critically important to help them launch their company. And I truly believe that the television background got me indoors that perhaps I would not have been able to open before. And so the ability to put something on stage and make it happen at the time that it was supposed to happen and getting all the pieces together was super, super critical. This collaboration side, going back to the corporate, I directed as a producer all of those elements, and I needed to understand how to do each one of the elements. I didn't have to do each one of those elements. So coming into the collaboration side at weddings, I feel very fortunate that I had that very high-powered, pressure-filled environment, because when it comes down to things not going perfectly in a wedding, I have the ability to fill in those blanks. If someone doesn't arrive on time, I can bring additional manpower to bear to make it happen. And that is really the essence of the collaboration of this industry, is helping someone else be as good as they can be too. And I've really appreciated that part of this industry.
That's great. So you had talked to, I think, and again, it's kind of some of the questions and that I'd have for you about kind of some of the early weddings, and you had some interesting stories kind of about something about like a multi-layer cake and things early on.
Oh, sure.
Why don't you? So you guys decide like you're doing the restorations now. We're doing the weddings. How did it go? Kind of making that switch in the first couple of weddings that kind of came through the doors.
Yes. Okay. So I have to go back quite a few years prior to the wedding in the barn, but I think you're referring to a wedding. We had two very large IT company clients, and the two of their top level C-suite staff were engaged, two different companies, and they said, since you do our big events, we really encourage you to do our wedding. We trust you to do our wedding. And it was a fascinating experience to get into the personal lives of those people versus their corporate life. And this was a very healthy budget for a wedding. And we were able to build an entire patio and a pergola, and we flew flowers in off season. They were either from South America or New Zealand. They've been 30 years ago, so I've forgotten. But it was an incredible event at a local winery that had never done something like this before. And so we kind of launched them on that path of corporate and private celebrations and weddings there. And so I moved that. In that case, there was 7 versions of the cake to make sure everything was perfect. There were hand-built invitations that were beautiful, handmade paper and boxes, and they were sent with individual wrappings via Federal Express to these gifts. The attendees were picked up by valet at the airport, and their rooms were every room in the hotels were decorated individually for those couples and the memories that the engaged couple had with these people. And it was really an incredibly beautiful union that came together, where absolutely every memory that this couple had with their guests and every step of the journey once their guests put their feet on the ground at SeaTac were handled absolutely beautifully, to even the goodbye as they went away. The thank you gift that they were given was individually crafted. And to take that now to the weddings in the barn, different approach to it. In the beginning of the barn, as we are launching, we have a lot of brides that are DIY. They like the idea of doing things themselves, but as soon as you start talking about the complexities and the Rubik's Cube that needs to be put together, they understand how much more complicated it is. So I'm really pleased to have gotten to know deeply many of the professionals in the wedding industry, so I can speak clearly and well of their business and to bring those professionals into bear on a wedding when I know that a client wants to do something themselves, but they really shouldn't be doing something themselves, and kind of guide them into that decision of bringing a professional on board.
Yeah, it's tough because, everything, in life is going to cost, either time or money.
Everything costs time or money.
And so, it's that's a constant thing, and you see these people that, even like online and stuff that they're trying to, save, but then they're every day online, posting questions and trying to figure this out and trying to figure that out and trying to do this and trying to do that. And yeah, I famously always tell the story where, my friend got married and they wanted to do their own flowers and he was up till 4:00 in the morning the night before the wedding, because they wanted to save on money. And so they had to devote the time. Right.
Interesting conversations that I've had with couples that are attempting to do something like that. And I always bring up the conversation of what do they really want to have as a lasting memory from their wedding? And that usually gets them to pause for a moment and to talk about how they want the gathering to be joyous. Sometimes people say peaceful. Sometimes they say organized. They want beauty surrounding them in this moment of professing their love. And when I turn that conversation that way, I talk to them about how if they hire a professional, those things are delivered to them without the anxieties and the stress on their shoulders. So that helps to have them open up their thought process that maybe this is a time in their life that they should spend the money in delivering what their goals really are. And when it comes right down to it, I talk to them about them wanting their moms and their tribe, which is usually their wedding party or a little bit extended, to have a wonderful experience and leave the wedding with wonderful memories of the friendship? Or do you want them to leave being frustrated and having no great memories and sometimes even anger in a place in life that should be absolutely joyous, peaceful, beautiful, and celebratory?
No, I think that's right. I mean, like you said, kind of your mood afterward and kind of those memories.
Absolutely.
And, we just had a wedding where, for whatever reason, I don't really even know why, but a lot of the guests ended up leaving early, right? That they had planned for
other things.
That, it was going to have an after party and they were going to do all this stuff. And, we ended up leaving early. And I mean, that's one of those memories that's going to
stays a long time,
and I mean, obviously there was a lot of, joy and fun during the day and, everything else, but, like we're getting in the car afterward and, my assistant was like, and that was, a little bit of a downer kind of to end on. And, then you kind of go back and you're like, well, what led to that or what, and who forever knows that people were just tired and whatnot. But like you said, those, if you're having a lot of people do things or doing the DIY or all that stuff, it really does kind of last in that, that stink, whether it's good or bad, after the wedding.
Right. You're right about that, Reed. I believe that if a planner and professionals are brought on board early in the planning process, then questions are brought up of what is needed and necessary to express this beautiful moment in this couple's life. And maybe it's perhaps that they don't have an after party, but maybe they know their guests so well and they've actually spoken with their guests, and an after party is exactly what is needed. I think sometimes, depending on the age group of the couples, there is the need to impress your friends, and you move on in life and you get to a point where you're just wanting those super, super close relationships there. And one of the questions that I ask our couples is, do you want to spend the rest of your life with these people? Or do you want to have just a great big old party? And either one is okay. You need to make a conscious decision, and then you need to make a conscious budget of what you're going to do within that budget.
Well, and like you said, also kind of just knowing your audience, and if your people
Absolutely.
that are gonna, if it's a older crowd that's not going to dance, or the people really like to drink or don't drink or
Right.
want to play games, or there's but kind of tailoring that to your audience, I think is important.
And I think if the couples really know themselves well and know what they want to achieve, and remember that it's their day and not the day of all of the guests, then they'll be able to make those decisions appropriately. And they may choose it to be a big, huge family reunion. They may choose it to be a big friends reunion. Whatever the choice is, as long as it's a conscious choice, I think that is then the event can be designed and produced beautifully.
So now that we're at the farm, how did the first couple weddings that you guys did at the farm, how did those go? I'm sure there was a little hiccups, but
Yeah, lots of things. The biggest challenge that we had was that our event space is in a loft up a staircase. And because we're a farm support business is a business that is the secondary on the farm, and it's a historic barn. So we do not have an elevator. We have a great big huge grand staircase. And it takes quite a feat for a caterer to be able to perform in that situation. So we meet with them ahead of time and make sure that they have appropriate staff to do what needs to do, and or have the understanding of the challenges of an ancient old barn at a farm. And the hiccups that we had was that we had to bring additional labor from our side in to back up the caterers, because their experience has been usually same floor, roll the truck right up to the back floor, and or a full kitchen. And so that's a little bit of hiccup. And then one of the great things that happened, it was terrifying what had happened, but ultimately the backstory is it's very fun to hear. But we have a great big huge hay door in the loft of the barn, and it opens from the top out. And if you open it too far, it becomes more than parallel to the ground. And when something is a huge door that's 12 feet off the ground, laying parallel to the ground, and the wind picks up, you have some big, huge sail that's there. And the sail was so big that it started to move the barn. And that really freaked me out, because I hadn't been in the barn when there was that much power behind that moving of the sail. And the motor for the door failed at that point. And we ultimately had to get the tractor, and we lashed a ladder onto the forklift of the tractor and lift the forklift and the ladder up to use a 2x4 to push the door closed. And it was quite the task. But I have to give credit to Ray, the farm manager, because he was very, very creative in finding a solution. And that was my terrifying but great memory story of one of the very first functions that we had at the barn.
And maybe, I don't know enough about your backstory. Were you, this whole farm life, were you accustomed to that, or is this something
that's a whole story in itself? You know what? I'm actually from Iowa, and my farm stories is that we went to Uncle Potoff's farm in Iowa, playing out there, and I had this dreamy impression of what farm would be, and since then, I hadn't been on, certainly working on farms because of the corporate background. But the thing that was so eye-opening is how much work there is on a farm. There's so much work in a barn to keep it up so that it doesn't physically fall apart, and so much work at the front of the farm in just parking lots and overgrowth of vegetation and managing it so that it's a beautiful space but still can be a working farm. And it's more complicated than that in that I share the farm with two, sometimes three other farm hers that I call the farm women on the farm, 40 to 45 horses at any given time. We have about 100 chickens for Egg Song Farm, and we have alpacas and llama and sheeps and goats. And all of those are part of the activity. We have beehives at the outside area of the farm, and all of those are an integral part of an agritourism center that we are working to set up, and part of the burden as well of running a venue on a farm.
So one of my questions was when, you talk about, the farm life and kind of balancing that and what kinds of brides and grooms then, do you find? Is it people that enjoy the animal life? Is it, wanting to get married on a farm? Is it a combination of both? Kind of what is the clientele that you
drives
find?
Someone to a farm? That is a really, really good question. I actually thought that there would be a very narrow channel of customers or brides or clients that would come to a farm, and I was dead wrong about that. We have people that come to the farm because they want to be outside. We have people that come to the farm because their grandfather or grandmother had a big old barn or had a farm, and they absolutely love the idea of bringing those memories back from their childhood. We have people that come to a farm because they want to bring an animal into their wedding, or they love the idea of the ancient, but they want to make it absolutely elegant. And that's what's beautiful about this barn and this loft. It is like a canvas. It's soaring rafters, 28 feet tall. It looks like a cathedral on the inside without all the beautiful stone and stained glass. And it lends itself to being very simple and very rustic, but also super elegant. I've had people bring in very tall crystal chandeliers, flowing chiffon everywhere, cafe lights, up lighting, and no lighting, and something very simple. We've done straw bales outside, farm tables, round tables, classic to almost a bare naked kind of feel. And because the barn is so beautiful itself, people will walk up the stairs and they literally stop at the top of the stairs and their chin goes to the ceiling and they look up and the first words are, "Wow, this is amazing." And I've been delighted by that and love the breadth of reasons why people would have a celebration in a barn.
That's awesome. Do you get kind of caught up in that, in the romance and kind of part of the weddings, or are you more, because it can kind of go either way for vendors. They either it's a job and they love to do it, or they get kind of caught up in it.
Yeah, well, I'm relatively new in it, so I would say that I'm kind of caught up in the fun and the romance of it. I am a relator and a driver. So it's important for me to be able to drive my business and meet people in the industry. But the relator part of me loves the love stories of the brides and grooms. And I love working with them. The fine line for me is that I am not their planner. I am their venue. And it's very easy to have brides and grooms ask you to step over that line. And although I can do that because of the producing of events, that is not my role here. So I tend to point towards planners, tend to point towards designers who are florists that do a beautiful job of kind of bridging those two pieces. And I'm learning that along the way.
I was curious, what is the most challenging, part for you now, where obviously even just listening today, but kind of going back and forth with getting ready for the open house, which, I want to talk about too.
That's very exciting.
But, you're kind of, you're the director here, you have to deal with marketing, you have to deal with the balance of, the farm and obviously meeting with brides and grooms and kind of getting that coordinated. So, where do you find, because part of the podcast here is, other vendors and things, and learning from lessons from other people and things. So what are some of the most challenging aspects of what you do, and kind of how do you manage that?
Yeah. Frankly, Reed, right now, I'm not managing my days really, really well, to be quite honest. My days are about 16 hours long right now. And I do have an adult daughter who's moved into a house, and I love to help her with her things. And I have a 15-year-old child who needs her mom as well. And so that balance, and I'm also married, and we try to have family time. And it's sometimes, like last night, in putting this new patio in, my husband and child and I were there until 9 p.m. Sometimes it just takes that to get a new project launched. But you asked me about all the roles, and it's a lot of roles. Systems in a business take time to set up, and sometimes in making choices of systems, those systems fail along the way, and I consider that a learning opportunity to make a system better. So my role is systems. My role is bookkeeping right now. I've brought on a absolutely incredible, very knowledgeable woman and her staff that used to work for the IRS. So they keep me on the straight and narrow, which is wonderful, and helping me get those systems on place. I have a tech guy that helps me with the computers. I have a farm manager that helps me with physical labor as I am physically laboring there. I go to networking meetings in the evening. Sometimes, like this midday, I might go out for a lunch, and literally in the back of my car, I have pink overalls and blue boots, and they are caked with mud and dust. And later this afternoon, my hair will be in a messy bun, and I will pull those overalls on over the top of what I'm wearing today and go out and work in the yard. And then maybe in the evening, I have an event this evening at a women's group, and I have a skirt and top in the office, and I will change into it, hoping that the hair is okay enough to go out in public. But then I say, I'm a farm woman. I work on a farm. So I have a little bit of grace that everyone gives me from coming straight from the farm to an event. So it's kind of crazy life, but I really, really love it.
What would be your advice for others to, that feel like they might be overwhelmed or having trouble doing, obviously time management and
Right.
things like that, and juggling a lot of different balls?
You know what? I partner to Well, first of all, I think everyone needs to take care of themselves. So in a rare day, although it's rare, I do take time off to take care of myself. I go to a spa with friends, or I go on a little bike ride, or sneak out to the beach for a few hours, or sometimes just take a drive and get away. And sometimes those drives are to other open houses from other venues that I really love to support, because perhaps maybe a client might not be a perfect match for the barn, and I want to make sure that they are referred to another local venue of people that I've really developed relationships to. But taking time for yourself is really important, and then bringing a community of professionals around you. So I reach out to a variety of professionals. You mentioned the open house that we have coming up. A really integral part of this open house is Yelena from JBK Events and Weddings and Events. She's an incredible designer, and she is working as hard as I have on this upcoming open house. And we're thrilled that you're going to be there too. And our goal there is to make a really great environment, bring some guests onto the farm so that people have, the vendors have great exposure, ask the professionals that are coming to bring their best to bear on the experience, and we all benefit from that along the way.
Yeah, talk just specifically kind of about the open house and what's going on, and,
Sure.
and kind of the the atmosphere you want to create and the people you want to attract. And
Sure, that's fun.
Let's walk through this, because like you said, you kind of fit this in, we probably would have got you on anyway at the podcast at some point, but specifically kind of targeted at this next weekend.
Right. So our spring open house is Sunday, May 19th. It's from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we have 22 vendors, including Reed and Best Made Videos that's going to be there, and florists and caterers and decorators and rental company and cake people. We have an alterations specialist, and we are decorating in 3 different themes throughout the barn, and the goal is to provide corporate planners an opportunity to be able to see a venue and perhaps realize that there is a beautiful opportunity to do a really cool themed event in a space like this. So we are setting up a theme on one end that I will not reveal so that people can come and see it, and a small wedding ceremony on the other end. And anyone from the corporate planners to brides can come and do tastings. We have ice cream cart there, a wood-fired pizza truck there, wonderful music, and all of those vendors as well. So it'll be a great day. And if someone wants to see the animals, they can see the animals, because Holly from Egg Song Farm, our chicken and animal farmer, will be there too.
That's awesome. No, I think it's great. And, obviously just kind of trying to build a community, where vendors can kind of come in and participate. I know I saw Tony from the Puget Sound Photo Booth Company.
Oh, yes. He's going to be there.
And I said, man, you're going to be there. And because he has other people to work to. So, yeah, I wouldn't miss it for the world. So one last question kind of before we go. Talk to me about your wedding, if you don't mind, and kind of how that relates now to, obviously now you're like neck deep and everything now, but walking through the origins of that.
Wow, interesting that you asked that, because frankly, I haven't even thought about it in this whole journey, but you've brought up a really joyous, momentous time in my life. My husband and I have been married for 31 years, and we got married in Minnesota. We were here in Seattle for grad school, and obviously we have stayed and made Seattle our home, but our wedding was in Minnesota, and so we planned it like a destination, but that's where we were from. And it was a very large wedding. It was intended to be 100 people, and the word got out, and it became a family reunion of 4 days long, and we had 350 people at this wedding, and it was kind of an insane time, but very joyous. And it went from women's parties first to beach party at a lake in Minnesota, and a paddle board or a paddle boat party, and then the wedding and a country club dance. And so it was pieces of almost everything put into a very long 4-day wedding process. And now that you're saying that, it kind of makes me think of many of the Indian weddings where there are multiple days and multiple events along the way. And many of the Hispanic weddings and quinceañera parties are like that too. There are multiple functions, sometimes in different places or sometimes all in one place, and they come back several days in a row. So I have that foundation that I can, that must come up as I'm speaking with couples. They didn't consciously think about it, but that understanding of the complexity of a celebration is as complex as a corporate big event. It's all a Rubik's Cube. It might be, 9 squares on one side. It could be 36 squares on one side, and the cube keeps tumbling until the day of the event.
That's awesome. Yeah, we just booked a 4-day Indian wedding for next summer, and I'm so happy that they booked now. And we met them, and I said, guys, because they're so like you said, where you have different events and kind of piecing it together, and what do we want to do? And I said, I'm so glad you guys have us on now, so we can kind of be a part of that throughout it. Because, with videography, sometimes it's more of a last minute thing, or, 6 months out or 3 months. And so, to kind of be able to be along for that. Because like you said, where you have all of this family coming in and all these different events and things, and figuring out, how do we want to incorporate the video coverage of that was awesome for me to kind of
absolutely
figure out, okay, this day we're going to do that, and this day, and just having a plan and kind of having a vision, which I think like if you have couples that want, like you said, it's kind of like a canvas. So you want people with a vision, that know what they want, or at least have some kind of idea of it. So,
and I have to note here that video and the capturing of video or capturing of moments in life through video has really dramatically changed throughout the years. A long time ago, it was just a still picture from a wedding, and people understand that they can create a lifelong memory if they add video components to their celebrations. And you mentioned you got brought on early, and that is a beautiful process, because this end video it's a major book in this couple's life over the next year of the planning. And I think that's really cool that you'd have the opportunity to sit with them ahead of time, even in their brainstorming of how they would plan to the event itself and perhaps even afterwards. And that's a beautiful capturing of a season of someone's life that they can bring back for themselves to look at over the years, or even for their children. And my 15-year-old says, "Mom, can I watch your wedding video once in a while?" And she's amazed that we would look that young, and that there's grandma, or is that my aunt who passed away? And you tell me a story about, great grandma, and there she is. And you can only do that in video, because you can see someone in a picture for a moment in time, but when you see them moving, you hear them laughing. Oh my gosh, Reed, this has totally become emotional to me. Wow. You hear their laughter, you see their movements, you see how they're dressed, and it's a story that passes generation by generation. So thank you for doing what you're doing, capturing people's seasons in life.
And obviously you had a video of your wedding.
I do. Yep. It's not as glamorous as they do them nowadays and what you could capture, but it really means a lot to me. And it definitely means a lot to my kids.
Well, that's great. I wasn't trying to turn this into a plug for wedding.
I know, but it was just a moment of emotional memory. So that's great.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on and kind of sharing the story. And I know that we could talk, I'm sure for hours kind of about, the history of the farm and everything. But it's been really great. And I'm really excited to be participating and getting to do this open house and everything else. So.
Wonderful. And you know what? If everyone makes a few moments to come out to the farm Sunday, May 19th from 11 to 4, they will be able to meet Reed and the rest of the incredible professionals in this industry that make beautiful celebrations for people.
If people want to learn more about you, the farm, maybe schedule some time. If they can't make it to the open house, everything else, where would you kind of point them in the good direction?
Yes. So we have a website there. You can fill out a contact form, or certainly you can give me a call or text me. Usually I'm in and around between the hours of 9 and 3 o'clock, and I host lots of short lead tours, and can schedule them out several months as well. So anything that works is fair game at this point.
And it's the barn at hollyfarm.com.
The barn at hollyfarm.com, Instagram, Facebook, all the same. Yep. The barn at Holly Farm. And our hashtag is #reallyOldBarn and the barn at Holly Farm.
That's awesome. Thank you so much again. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. If you are interested in participating in year 2 of the podcast, I have a great link set up. You can go to bestmadevideos.com/podcast guest, and that'll kind of get you started on that. And, like and subscribe and all that stuff. We're not doing this for money. We're doing this to build community. So just trying to get the word out there. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.